All right, today we're diving into the work of one of the 20th century's most brilliant and, let's be honest, demanding writers, Shirley Hazzard. Now, she's an author who won some major awards, but, she never really chased that mainstream fame, and that was totally by design. So we're going to find out why her challenging but oh so rewarding work is something you absolutely have to experience. So to really get Hazzard, you got to understand this central tension that pretty much fueled her entire life's work. See, on one hand, you have these just magnificent, almost mythic novels about love and morality and fate, and they're written in this prose that feels like it could have been written 100 years ago or yesterday. But then on the other hand, you get these furious, super well-researched critiques of power and corruption. It's this incredible duality, and it's what makes her so fascinating. And that, of course, raises the big question, right? Who was the real Shirley Hazzard? Was she this philosophical novelist writing about the human heart, or was she a political firebrand ready to take on the world? I mean, how do these two sides, which seem so different, actually fit together? Well, that's the puzzle we're going to piece together today.
And to solve that puzzle, you have to start with her pretty extraordinary life. Because you see, Hazzard wasn't a writer who was formed in some quiet classroom or a fancy writer's workshop. No, she was forged in the chaos of a world recovering from war.
Her early life was just constant motion. She was born in Sydney in 1931, but her dad's job in the diplomatic service meant the family was always on the move. And we're not talking about your average family vacations here. Get this, at just 16 years old, she was working for British intelligence, monitoring the civil war in China. Yeah, let that sink in. A teenager right in the middle of a huge global conflict. By the time she was 25, she'd already called 6 different countries home. So all this constant uprooting, it gave her this incredibly unique international point of view. She never felt truly attached to any one nation. She even said her temperament was not a very national one. And this is so important to understanding her. It's what shaped her into a writer who didn't see the world through the lens of just one country, but as this big, complex, interconnected, and often deeply flawed system.
And speaking of flawed systems, well, that's exactly what she was about to run into head-on. Her next big experience, working for a decade at the United Nations in New York, would basically ignite the first, and you could say most explosive side of her writing career.
I mean, this quote just says it all, doesn't it? It so powerfully captures how disillusioned she became. You have to remember, she joined the UN believing in its ideals, this big internationalist dream. But what she found? Well, it was a bureaucratic nightmare. And that huge gap between the noble mission on paper and the soul-crushing reality she saw every day, that became her great, furious subject. This whole experience ended up fueling 2 major works of nonfiction. First, in 1973, she published Defeat of an Ideal. In it, she laid out in meticulous detail how the UN's founding principles were compromised right from the start, especially by a secret deal that let the US meddle in staffing. Then, almost 20 years later, she dropped an even bigger bombshell with Countenance of Truth, where she accused the world's major powers of covering up the Nazi past of a UN Secretary General, Kurt Waldheim. I mean, wow.
And let's be super clear about what these books were. These weren't just gentle suggestions for improvement. No, they were polemics. They were powerful, well-documented, and incredibly brave attacks on an institution she felt had completely betrayed its mission. This was Shirley Hazzard, the truth teller, and she was not backing down.
Okay, so if that's one side of Hazzard, the fierce public critic, what about the other side? Well, in a world that she saw as full of institutional failure and moral compromise, her novels became this powerful kind of counterbalance. They were her search for integrity, for beauty, and for real, authentic connection, but on a much more human scale.
And her literary career? It launched with just astonishing speed. In 1961, while she was still working at the UN, she sent her very first short story, ever, to the New Yorker. And they accepted it, just like that. I mean, that almost never happens. And that one success gave her the freedom to walk away from the UN and dedicate herself completely to what she always felt was her true calling, writing fiction.
So over the next 4 decades, she produced a pretty small but absolutely masterful body of work. We're talking about novels like The Bay of Noon, The Transit of Venus, and The Great Fire. These books earned her huge awards, including the National Book Award here in the States. And in them, she explores these huge themes of love and fate and moral choice, all set against this vast and often tragic backdrop of what she called our calamitous world. And her pace, well, it was famously slow. She was the opposite of prolific. Just look at this.
There was a 23-year gap between what many consider her masterpiece, The Transit of Venus, and her final novel, The Great Fire. 23 years. This clearly wasn't a writer trying to chase trends or pump out bestsellers. This was a true artist, carefully crafting every single word, weighing each sentence for its moral and artistic impact.
Okay, and this brings us right to the heart of what it means to read Shirley Hazzard, her style. Because reading her work isn't just about following a story. It's about engaging with language on a really, really profound level.
You know, her biographer, Brigida Olubas, puts it just perfectly. She says that with Hazzard, you're there for the sentences. They're like nobody else's. And she's so right. You don't just read Hazzard for the plot. You read her for the sentences themselves. They're intricate, they're poetic, and they are completely and utterly unique.
And that complexity, it's totally intentional. Hazzard really believed that in our modern world of easy answers and shallow communication, the act of serious reading was a moral act. Her sentences make you pay attention, they force you to slow down and really think about what's being said. And for her, that focus, that mental effort, was its own form of resistance.
So yeah, the words you always hear used to describe her style, stately, ornate, philosophical, they really tell you what you're getting into. This is not a quick beach read, folks. It's an immersive experience. It's like a deep dive into the rhythm of language and the complexity of the human mind.
Okay, so let's bring it all back together. We've got the fiery political writer on one side and the elegant philosophical novelist on the other. How do they actually connect? And maybe more importantly for you, if you're new to her work, where in the world do you begin? Okay, here's the solution to the puzzle we started with. For Hazzard, these two sides of her writing weren't separate at all. They were deeply connected. Think of it like this. Her nonfiction exposed how big, impersonal systems fail us when it comes to morality. Her fiction, then, is her powerful answer to that failure. It basically argues that real morality, real integrity, and real beauty, those things can only be found and protected on the small, intimate scale of individual human love.
So, if you're ready to jump in, here is your roadmap. Step 1, start with her collected stories. They're the perfect way to get a taste of her style and themes in smaller, more manageable bites. Then, for step 2, pick up her short novella, The Evening of the Holiday. It's this beautiful, concentrated love story set in Italy. And then, once you feel ready, step 3, commit. Dive into the deep end with her masterpiece, The Transit of Venus. Look, it's a commitment, for sure, but it is one of the truly great novels of the last century.
And all of this leaves us with the final, powerful question that her work really forces us to ask. In a world where our big institutions so often seem to fail us, could it be that the quiet, deliberate, and yes, sometimes difficult, pursuit of love and beauty is the most meaningful form of resistance we have? Well, Shirley Hazzard's incredible body of work seems to suggest that the answer is a resounding yes.